Okay, scalloped potatoes, here we come. We are going to preheat our oven to 350, and that's on, and then we're going to make our roux. If you've never made a roux or a cheese sauce, it's really pretty easy. It's kind of intimidating sometimes, but this is when measurements are important to get a good roux. So, we are going to take our butter, 2 tablespoons of butter out of here. Oh, we're almost out of butter. I'm kind of eyeballing it. You can use your tablespoon measuring if you want to, but as far as the butter goes, I'm kind of liberal with it. We're going to turn that on to medium, and we're going to let that butter start melting. And we're going to be putting 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour in the butter. And we're going to use this little spatula because it'll get it moving around really nicely and won't scratch your pot. We basically want to cook the flour a little bit till it turns kind of a golden brown. So you're going to let your butter melt, get creamy. And sometimes I like to warm up my milk ahead of time, just because it's less of a shock and you won't get a broken sauce ever. You know, it's pretty much foolproof that way. It gets a little trickier if you decide to use cold milk. Just be careful. Make sure you stir a lot and get all of those lumps out. I might turn this a little bit up because my stove does not work properly. I guess I kind of know my temperature on my stove just from using it so often, but everybody's medium-high is different on their burners, so we're going to see it start to melt. We're going to put our first tablespoon of flour in there, our second, and 3. Start stirring it in there. Let it melt nicely with the butter. See, it's turning that nice nutty color. So we're just going to let it do its thing for a minute. Just kind of move it around every once in a while so it doesn't scorch. Nothing worse than scorched butter and flour. So medium-high, just keep moving it. And they say, you know, a lot of people wonder how to thicken your sauce. You can just cook it longer. So you've got plenty of flour here. So you're not going to have to add more flour. But if you want a thicker sauce, you can cook it longer at the end. But I like it a little soupy because then I know my onions are getting really good and coated in this recipe. Okay, so you're going to start smelling it. It's going to get kind of a nice smell to it. I like to put my salt and my pepper in now. Because it's a potato dish, I am getting pretty crazy with the salt. Because everybody knows that potatoes need salt. Okay, so there it is. And now we are going to stir in, or I should say whisk in, our milk, which actually has been sitting out for a while, so it's not super cold. I bring my heat back up because, once again, it doesn't work very well on my stove. Slowly put it in. And just give it a little whisk. I only whisk until it's broken up, and then I go back to my my spatula. Just because I don't want to scratch the pan, but this is the only type of pan I have right now for this particular thing. So, okay, now we're just going to let it come to a boil. I'll see a couple bubbles in a minute. Make sure we have no lumps. Looking good. So let that sit there for a minute. And while you're doing that, you should be draining your potatoes. If you put them ahead of time, I just did them earlier, so I'm going to drain them really quickly. Let them dry out. Dry out my pan. And we're going to go back and we're going to see if we have a couple bubbles, and we do. So we want to get just where you start to see some bubbles. And you're probably going to thicken it for about 2 minutes before we add your shredded cheddar cheese. It calls for 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. I use 3/4 cup because I like it really cheesy. And yeah, so we're going to go back here and take a look, and you can see it's starting to thicken up nicely. So like I said, 2 minutes should thicken it about to where you want it. Like I said, this is a little loose for some people, but it's going to cook down in the pot or in the oven. So I'm going to take it off now. It's been about 1.5 minutes because I like mine really soft, creamy. So now we took it off the heat, and now we're going to add our 3/4 cup or 1/2 cup, whatever you decide, of cheese. And then you're just going to let the cheese blend in nicely. It's not boiling anymore. It's just hot enough for the cheese to melt perfectly. So there we go with that. So we're going to leave that for a minute. It's just going to sit there and look pretty. And I'm going to blot my potatoes a little bit just because they were in water. I was trying to prep ahead of time. So just make sure that they're nice and dry. Okay, so this is a layered kind of fun thing we do. We're going to put 1/2 of our potatoes down in the bottom. No, I don't use oil. It always calls for oil or grease or something in the bottom, and none of my stuff sticks bad enough for me to add extra calories to it. So there's 1/2 of the potatoes. I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to get myself some of my thinly sliced rounds of onion. So I'm going to put down a layer there. And I like to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the layers. Lots of pepper. A little bit more salt. I use kosher salt when I'm cooking. And then we take 1/2 of our cheese sauce and we pour it on top. And that's about 1/2. Let that soak down in there a little bit more. Oops. All right, there is 1/2. We're going to get the rest of our potatoes here. I probably made just a few too many for this, but it's going to be super yummy. Okay, there we go. A little more pepper, a little more salt. Some more onions. I just like the way they brown and they're round on top. It's kind of fancy looking in the end. But simple, super duper easy. Can't go wrong with this one. We're going to pour the rest of our sauce on there. All right. We're just going to blend it all together and we're going to put this in the oven.